Millionaire arrives late to his best friend's wedding and falls in love with the bridesmaid at the altar. Minutes later, she catches the bouquet, and he decides he must have her no matter what it takes. While the bride and groom exchanged vows, the two exchanged glances that said everything. What began as a ceremony turned into the beginning of an announced betrayal. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching from. We continue. I promise this will be the best story you'll ever hear in your life. Emily Johnson lived between two worlds. During the day, she was the impeccable financial consultant, always in a perfectly tailored blazer with perfect spreadsheets. At night, she transformed into an artist with clay-stained hands, creating pieces that spoke to the heart. The old Victorian house in Pacific Heights, San Francisco, inherited from her grandmother, reflected this duality. The meticulously organized office and the studio where creative chaos reigned. At 35, Emily had built a solid reputation in the San Francisco financial market. Her small consultancy, founded with Jason, a college friend, grew each year. What few knew was that each piece of ceramic molded in her studio carried pieces of a story she was trying to forget. 3 years earlier, Richard, her fiancé, disappeared a week before their wedding, leaving only a cold note about incompatibility of dreams. The pain of that rejection still pulsed when pressed. "You need to participate more in social events, Emily. Networking isn't optional in our field," insisted Jason as they reviewed the latest reports on a sunny Friday. "My work speaks for itself," she replied without lifting her eyes from the screen. "Besides, you're much better at it than I am. It's the wedding of my life. You're my business partner and best friend. Jessica will kill me if you don't show up," Jason smiled, mentioning his fiancée, an extroverted lawyer who had won his friend's heart 2 years ago. "And Horizon Group will be there. The merger with them could be the jump we need." Emily sighed. The merger with Horizon Group, a powerhouse in the national financial market, would bring stability to the small consultancy, but also ethical dilemmas. The group had a reputation for prioritizing profit above all else. "I'll be there," she promised, finally smiling, with a dress and everything. On Saturday, Jason and Jessica's wedding took place at a restored farm in the wine country. Emily arrived early, helping with the final details. She saw the happiness stamped on her friend's face and felt a pang of healthy envy, not of the relationship itself, but of the courage to give oneself again. During the ceremony, her gaze wandered through the crowd until it fixed on a man who was discreetly entering from the opposite side. Tall, with a well-trimmed beard and focused gaze, he seemed out of place amid the ambient joy. He checked his watch, and his face showed annoyance at being late. Emily smiled involuntarily at that discomfort so familiar. At the party, Jason finally introduced them. "Emily, this is Michael Reynolds, Financial Director of Horizon Group, and the person responsible for our future partnership. Michael, this is Emily, the mathematical brain behind our company." "And I'm just the pretty face," Jason joked, being called away immediately by other guests. Michael observed her with genuine interest. "So you're the person who created that social risk analysis model in the preliminary report?" Emily nodded, surprised that he had actually read the technical material. Most executives only pretended to be interested. "Impressive. I've never seen anyone integrate social variables with such precision in financial models," he continued. "I confess, I went into this merger meeting expecting more of the same, but your work has soul." "Soul isn't usually a valued word in the financial market," Emily replied with a slight smile. "Maybe that's exactly what's missing," he returned, holding her gaze for a moment longer than necessary. The conversation flowed surprisingly, easily. They discovered shared tastes for American literature and a mutual passion for strong coffee. Michael confessed his unusual hobby for an executive. He sailed whenever he could, seeking in the waters of San Francisco Bay the peace that numbers didn't offer. "And you? What do you do when you're not revolutionizing financial models?" he asked as they helped themselves to the dessert table. Emily hesitated. She rarely talked about her art. "I work with ceramics." "Artist and mathematician," reflected Michael. "Now I understand the originality of your approach." The orchestra began to play a slow song. Around them, couples formed on the dance floor. Emily felt the silent invitation in his eyes, but before they could decide, Jessica appeared for the traditional bouquet toss. "All single ladies to the floor now," announced the radiant bride. Emily reluctantly joined the group, more out of obligation than desire. When Jessica turned her back to throw the flowers, she made an unexpected movement, directing the bouquet precisely at Emily. The flowers described a perfect parabola and fell exactly into her hands, provoking applause and whistles. Embarrassed, Emily sought refuge near the bar where Michael was waiting with 2 glasses of champagne. "Looks like you're destined to be next," he joked, handing her a glass. "I don't believe in that kind of superstition," she replied, trying to sound indifferent, but feeling an inexplicable warmth rise up her neck. As the night progressed, the connection between them deepened. They talked about books, movies, travels. Emily realized she was laughing more than she had in months. When the party began to empty, he offered, "May I take you home? My driver is at our disposal." On the way, a comfortable silence settled between them. Emily watched the city lights reflected in the glass, feeling strangely light. "You know what I like most about ceramics?" she suddenly asked. "The clay doesn't lie. It reveals exactly the pressure you apply, every hesitation, every certainty." Michael observed her with intensity, as people should be. Upon arriving at the Victorian house, he insisted on accompanying her to the door. Under the soft light of the porch, Emily felt the atmosphere change. There was a sweet tension in the air, a possibility hovering between them. "It was a pleasure meeting you, Emily," he said, holding her hand for a moment longer than protocol would allow. "Likewise," she replied, realizing she didn't want the night to end. In an impulse that surprised them both, Michael leaned in and gently touched her lips. The kiss, brief and restrained, carried a silent promise of something deeper. Emily felt her heart accelerate, as if awakening from a long sleep. "May I call you tomorrow?" he asked as he pulled away. Emily just nodded, unable to form words. As she watched him leave, she touched her own lips, feeling the ghost of that kiss. Inside her chest, something she thought dormant began to awaken, bringing with it both hope and fear. Entering the house, she placed the bouquet in an improvised vase and looked around. The silent Victorian suddenly seemed too big, too empty. For the first time in a long time, Emily allowed herself to dream of possibilities. The phone's ring awakened Emily from a sleep filled with unusual dreams. Still drowsy, she answered without checking the number. "Good morning, I hope I'm not calling too early." Michael's deep voice made her heart instantly accelerate. "How did you get my number?" she asked, sitting up in bed. "Jason gave it to me. I hope you don't mind." There was a hesitation in his voice. "I couldn't stop thinking about our conversation yesterday." Emily smiled, twirling a lock of hair between her fingers. "Neither could I." "Would you like to have dinner with me tonight? I know a restaurant in Nob Hill that serves the best risotto in the city." That invitation triggered a wave of contradictory emotions. The initial impulse was to refuse, natural protection after being closed in her shell for so long. But something in the way he spoke, direct and without games, disarmed her. "I accept," she replied, surprising herself with her own decision. The restaurant was exactly as Michael had described, cozy with soft lighting and a privileged view of the bay. Emily chose a simple but elegant dress, something she hadn't worn in a long time. When she arrived, he was already waiting, standing immediately upon seeing her. "You look beautiful," he said, with a simplicity that dispensed with artifice. During dinner, Emily discovered more about Michael. The son of a university professor and a doctor, he grew up valuing knowledge above possessions. He graduated in economics with honors and built his career with obstinate determination. At 40, he was respected in the financial market, but confessed that he frequently questioned the meaning of it all. "Sometimes I wonder if I shouldn't have followed the academic path. Like my father," he confessed as they savored dessert. "There are days when the numbers seem empty of meaning." "Is that why you sail?" asked Emily, capturing something deeper in the confession. "Exactly. On the sea, I'm just a man against the forces of nature. No reports, administrative boards, or million-dollar mergers." His eyes shone. And you? What does ceramics represent? Emily hesitated before answering. Control, maybe? In ceramics, I can transform something amorphous into something beautiful, following only my own rules. I'd like to see your work someday, said Michael, his hand lightly touching hers on the table. That first meeting unfolded into others. A dinner turned into breakfast on a sunny Sunday. A walk along the waterfront transformed into a visit to a contemporary art exhibition. With each meeting, the layers of protection that Emily had built over the years began to dissolve. On a particularly warm afternoon, she finally invited him to see her studio. Michael observed each piece with genuine interest, delicately touching the textured surfaces, asking questions about techniques and inspirations. "This one is special," he commented, pointing to an abstract piece that represented intertwined hands. "It was the first one I made after—" Emily interrupted herself, unable to complete the sentence. Michael approached, taking her hands in his. "After what?" At that moment, Emily opened up completely, telling him about Richard, about the cancelled wedding, about how ceramics had been her refuge during the reconstruction process. Michael just listened without judgments or precipitated advice. "May I try?" he asked when she finished, pointing to the potter's wheel. Emily smiled, positioning herself behind him, guiding his inexperienced hands on the wet clay. The physical contact, the intimacy of that shared moment, created between them a connection that transcended words. When the clay took a minimally recognizable form, they both laughed, covered in clay. "This is harder than it looks," admitted Michael. "Like most things worth doing," replied Emily, meeting his gaze. The kiss that followed was different from the first, deeper, more intense, without the initial hesitation. Emily felt herself bloom under that touch, as if every cell in her body was awakening from a long winter. The following week, preparations for the merger between Emily's consultancy and Horizon Group intensified. During a crucial meeting, she realized for the first time the conflict that was approaching. While presenting her socio-environmental analysis models, she noticed the discomfort of some of the group's directors. "These factors directly impact long-term sustainability," explained Emily, pointing to her graphs. "We cannot ignore them in the name of immediate profit." "Interesting approach, Ms. Johnson," interrupted Charles Morgan, executive director of the group. "But I'm afraid it's a bit idealistic for the current market." Emily felt her blood boil. "Idealism and responsibility are different things, Mr. Morgan. Our clients specifically seek this differentiation." Michael, who until then had remained silent, intervened. "I believe we can find a balance. Emily's model brings a competitive differential that we could exploit as an exclusive advantage." Charles gave him a penetrating look. "I didn't know. You had converted to social evangelism, Reynolds." The tension was palpable. Emily realized at that moment that the personal relationship with Michael would inevitably complicate the professional issue. At the end of the meeting, Jason sought her out, visibly concerned. "What's happening between you and Reynolds?" he asked directly. Everyone noticed the chemistry in the room. "I don't know what you're talking about," Emily diverted, organizing her papers. "Emily, we've known each other for 15 years. I'm your best friend, not just any investor." Jason sat down beside her. "I'm concerned. This is a delicate moment to mix business and pleasure." "I know how to take care of myself," she replied dryly. "I know you do, but I also know how completely you give yourself when you allow yourself to feel." Jason sighed. "Just be careful. Michael has a reputation for being ruthless in business." Her friend's words echoed in her mind throughout the day. At night, when Michael appeared at her door with a bottle of wine and a tired smile, Emily felt the internal conflict intensify. "Tough day?" she asked, serving 2 glasses on the small back porch. "Charles is being more resistant than I expected," admitted Michael, loosening his tie. "But I don't want to talk about that now." His eyes met hers. "I spent the entire day thinking about you." Emily felt her heart accelerate but maintained her composure. "Michael, we need to talk about the merger, about what happened in the meeting today." "Emily, no, please, listen to me." She placed her glass on the table. I can't compromise my principles. That socio-environmental analysis model isn't just a marketing tool. It's the core of what I believe as a professional. Michael approached, touching her face gently. I know that. And it's one of the reasons why I'm falling in love with you. Your integrity, your passion for what you believe. The declaration caught Emily off guard, falling in love. The word hung between them, loaded with promises and uncertainties. How can I trust that, when professionally we're on opposite sides? She questioned, her voice almost a whisper. We're not on opposite sides, Emily. We're at a crossroads trying to find a common path. Michael held her hands. Give me the chance to prove we can balance both worlds. That night, Emily allowed herself to believe. She gave herself completely to Michael's arms, to the passion growing between them, trying to push away the doubts that whispered in her subconscious. The next morning, she woke up alone in bed. She found Michael in the kitchen preparing coffee, wearing only pants, his bare torso revealing a physique that perfectly matched his personality, strong, but without unnecessary ostentation. Good morning, he said, handing her a steaming cup. I hope you like it strong. Emily smiled, accepting the coffee. For a brief moment, she imagined what it would be like to wake up like this every day, sharing simple moments of domesticity. The image warmed her heart, but also brought a touch of fear. Giving herself again meant risking again. What are you thinking about? Asked Michael, noticing her distant expression. About how complicated all this is, she replied honestly. Us, the merger, the future. Michael put his cup on the counter and approached, hugging her from behind. One step at a time, Emily. We don't need to solve everything today. But time wouldn't wait for them. The following week, a new proposal from Horizon Group arrived at the table. The complete restructuring of the social area of the consultancy, effectively emptying years of work. Emily stared at the document with incredulity. The proposal was clear. Reduce the socio-environmental approach to a mere marketing department, emptying all the work that she and Jason had built over years. Her vision blurred with tears of frustration that she refused to shed. This is unacceptable, she declared, throwing the papers on the meeting room table. Jason and the other two employees of the consultancy looked at her with expressions that varied between agreement and apprehension. Emily, we need to be realistic, pondered Jason, always the diplomat. The merger with Horizon Group represents financial stability. Maybe we can negotiate some points, preserve the essential... Negotiate what exactly? Emily stood up, walking nervously around the room. Our identity, our values, is that what we're selling? A heavy silence settled in the room. Everyone knew she was right, but they also understood the reality of the market. Small consultancies like theirs rarely survived without support from larger groups. I'll talk to Michael, Emily finally decided. There must be another solution. Jason gave her a concerned look. Are you sure you can separate the professional from the personal in that conversation? The question hit Emily like a physical blow. In the last few weeks, her relationship with Michael had blossomed into something deep, surprising them both with its intensity. They shared not only physical passion, but also conversations that extended into the early hours, plans for the future, small gestures of affection that filled everyday life with meaning. Michael had even begun to leave some clothes in the Victorian house, a symbolic step that Emily hadn't allowed since Richard. I am perfectly capable of separating things, she replied with more conviction than she felt. That night, she waited for Michael with dinner prepared, lemon risotto, the dish they had shared on their first date. When he arrived, tired but smiling, Emily felt her heart tighten. How to reconcile the man who made her feel alive again with the executive who represented values so contrary to hers? We need to talk, she announced as soon as he kissed her, in greeting. Michael observed the set table, the wine decanting, the carefully prepared environment. Seems serious. It is. Emily served 2 glasses of wine, seeking liquid courage. I received the new proposal from Horizon Group today. Michael's expression subtly hardened. It was fascinating, thought Emily, how he could transition between the caring lover and the pragmatic executive in a matter of seconds. And it's unacceptable, Michael. You're practically eliminating the entire socio-environmental approach we've built. Emily kept her gaze firm. That model isn't just a market differential for us. It's the reason why we do what we do. Michael sighed, running his hand through his hair in a gesture that Emily already recognized as a sign of tension. Charles is convinced that the focus needs to be immediate profit. The pressure from shareholders increased after the last quarter below expectations. He took a sip of his wine. I tried to argue, Emily, but he has the board on his side. And you? Whose side are you on? The question hung between them, loaded, with meanings beyond the professional. I'm trying to find a balance, he finally replied. I believe in your work. I believe that socio-environmental analysis is the future of the financial market. But I also need to be realistic about the group's expectations. Realistic, Emily repeated the word, with bitterness. That's exactly what Jason said today. Maybe because it's true. Michael approached, taking her hands in his. Emily, the corporate world doesn't change overnight. We need strategy, patience. I'm not asking for a revolution. Michael, I'm asking for respect for the work we've built. Michael looked deeply into her eyes. Give me a week. I promise to find a solution that works for everyone. Emily wanted to believe. More than that, she needed to believe. Because the alternative meant admitting she was repeating the same mistake, giving her heart to someone incapable of honoring it completely. The following days passed in a silent tension. At the office, Jason and the employees walked on eggshells, fearing the imminent explosion. At home, Emily dove into clay with renewed intensity, creating pieces that expressed her inner turbulence. Michael called daily, but maintained physical distance, claiming endless meetings with the board. Emily felt his absence as a physical pain, but also recognized the need for that space to clear her own thoughts. On a particularly frustrating afternoon, where none of the ceramic pieces seemed to adequately express what she felt, Emily received an unexpected visit. Jessica, recently returned from her honeymoon, appeared at the studio with a bottle of wine and a determined expression. Jason told me everything, she announced, serving generous glasses for both. About the merger, about you and Michael. Emily sighed. I don't know what to do, Jess. First, drink. Jessica pushed the glass in her direction. Second, show me these pieces you've been making lately. Emily hesitated before uncovering the sculptures she kept covered in the corner of the studio. They were different from her usual work, more angular, more intense, almost violent in their expressiveness. Wow, exclaimed Jessica, examining them attentively. This is powerful, Emily. It's how I feel, divided, torn between what I want and what I should do. Jessica observed her friend with the perceptive eyes of a lawyer accustomed to reading between the lines. You really like him, don't you? More than I'd like to, admitted Emily, feeling the tears finally escape. And that's exactly what makes everything so difficult. Jessica hugged her tightly. You know what I learned in court? That black and white rarely exist. We live in shades of grey, Emily. Maybe the solution isn't either complete surrender or direct confrontation. Those words planted a seed in Emily's mind. That night, after Jessica left, she worked until dawn, not on clay, but on spreadsheets, developing a new model, a third way that could satisfy both ethical principles and market expectations. The next morning, she called Jason. I need you in the office now. When her partner arrived, he found Emily surrounded by papers, her eyes shining with that familiar intensity that always preceded her greatest innovations. Look at this, she said, pointing to the graphs on the screen. We can create a specific division for social impact projects, separate from the core business, but strategically positioned to attract specific investors. Jason studied the numbers with growing attention. This could work, but would Michael and Horizon Group accept it? I don't know, admitted Emily, but it's my final offer. Either we find this middle ground or there's no merger. That afternoon, she sent the proposal directly to Michael with a simple message. Can we talk? Tonight in my studio. At 8 o'clock, the familiar sound of Michael's car parking in front of the Victorian made Emily's heart accelerate. She waited for him in the studio, surrounded by the pieces she had created in the last few days, her emotions transformed into tangible form. When he entered, his gaze immediately caught the sculptures. "They're different," he commented, approaching to examine a particularly expressive one. "They're honest," replied Emily, "as we need to be now." Michael nodded, understanding. "I read your proposal. It's brilliant, like everything you do." But Charles already rejected the idea. He doesn't see immediate value in social investment. Michael sat down, suddenly looking exhausted. "I tried, Emily. I swear I tried. I spent the entire week arguing, presenting success cases, long-term projections." Emily felt something wither inside her. Even already expecting that answer, the reality hurt more than she had anticipated. "So it's over," she stated with a neutral voice. "The merger, us—" "No." Michael stood up abruptly, approaching. "I refuse to accept Charles's decision." Emily looked at him confused. "What do you mean?" "I presented an ultimatum. Either we accept your proposal in full, or I withdraw from the merger project." His eyes shone with determination. "Surprisingly, the board is considering. Apparently my departure would represent a bigger problem than a social division." Emily felt the ground move beneath her feet. "You risked your position for this? For me?" "For us," corrected Michael, taking her hands. "For what we can build together, personally and professionally, because I realized I don't want to be part of something that contradicts the values of the woman I love." The word hung between them, crystalline in its simplicity. Love. Emily felt its weight and lightness simultaneously. "You love me?" she asked, her voice almost inaudible. "More than I imagined possible," confessed Michael. "And that scares me as much as it scares you, Emily. I didn't plan this. I didn't expect to find someone who would challenge me, who would make me question everything I've always taken for granted." Emily felt the tears flow freely. "I'm so tired of being afraid, Michael, of protecting myself, of expecting the worst." "Then, don't expect," he replied, gently wiping her tears. "Build the best with me, step by step, day after day." That night, under the soft light of the studio, among sculptures that silently testified to her emotional journey, Emily and Michael sealed a silent pact of honesty, of shared vulnerability, of joint construction. They made love slowly, rediscovering each other, reaffirming with each touch the promise of a future that, although uncertain, they would face together. The next morning, Emily woke to the sound of Michael preparing coffee in the kitchen, as if he had been doing it for years. The domesticity of the moment brought a quiet certainty to her heart. Whatever the outcome of the merger, they would find their way. Her phone vibrated with a message from Jason. "Extraordinary meeting today, 10 a.m. Horizon Group will present a new proposal. Prepare yourself." Emily showed the message to Michael, who smiled enigmatically. "Looks like Charles gave in faster than I expected." "What did you do?" asked Emily, intrigued by that smile. "Let's say I had a frank conversation with some board members about the future of the financial market." Michael handed her a steaming cup. "And maybe I mentioned that a certain social investment fund would be very interested in your methodology, should Horizon Group not recognize its value." Emily laughed, feeling a wave of admiration and affection. "You played dirty." "I learned from the best," he replied, kissing her softly. "Now let's face these sharks together." The meeting room at Horizon Group intimidated with its calculated grandeur. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the panoramic view of San Francisco, reminding everyone who held the power in that negotiation. Emily took a deep breath before entering, adjusting her impeccably cut blazer. Beside her, Jason nervously clutched the document folder. "We're in this together," he whispered, giving her a light squeeze on the shoulder. Inside, the complete board of Horizon Group waited, indecipherable expressions on faces trained for ruthless negotiations. Charles Morgan occupied the head of the table, his rigid posture betraying his discomfort with the situation. Michael was seated at the opposite side, deliberately distant to avoid any appearance of conflict of interest. "Ms. Johnson, Mr. West, welcome," began Charles with excessive formality. "We have carefully analyzed your counter-proposal and would like to present our final terms for the merger." An assistant distributed sealed folders to all present. Emily opened hers with slightly trembling fingers, preparing for another battle. But the first lines of the document completely surprised her. "This is," she murmured, looking at Michael with astonishment. "Exactly what we proposed," completed Jason, equally astounded. The document detailed the creation of a specific social impact division within the group, completely preserving the methodology developed by Emily, with contractual guarantees of autonomy and its own budget for at least 5 years. "With some additions that we believe are beneficial for both parties," explained Charles, his voice betraying slight irritation, "including team expansion and the possibility of developing specific financial products based on the methodology." Emily couldn't believe it. It was more than she had requested, more than she expected to achieve, even in the most optimistic scenario. "What motivated this change of position, Mr. Morgan?" she asked directly, her eyes studying the body language of the board members. Charles adjusted his tie, visibly uncomfortable. "Let's say we received clarifications about the market potential of your approach and information about competitors' interest in your methodology." Emily glanced quickly at Michael, who maintained a neutral expression, but his eyes shone with that familiar intensity that she had learned to recognize. "We'll need time to analyze the details," declared Jason, assuming the role of negotiator while Emily still processed the unexpected victory. "Naturally," agreed Charles, "we suggest reconvening in a week for the final signing if the terms are acceptable." When the meeting ended, Emily and Jason could barely contain their excitement until they reached the elevator. "How did he manage this?" exclaimed Jason, hugging her enthusiastically as soon as the doors closed. "It was practically everything we asked for, Emily, and with 5-year guarantees." Emily smiled, sharing her friend's joy but also feeling a touch of apprehension. What exactly had Michael done to convince the board? What cards had he played in that negotiation, and at what personal cost? That night, she anxiously waited, at home, preparing a special dinner to celebrate. When Michael finally arrived, his face showed exhaustion, but also undeniable satisfaction. "You did it," said Emily simply, handing him a glass of wine. "We did it," he corrected, accepting the drink. "Your proposal was irrefutable, Emily. It just needed the right ears." "And how exactly did you ensure those ears?" she asked, trying to keep the tone light, but not completely hiding her concern. Michael sighed, placing the glass on the table. "Maybe it's better you don't know all the details." Those words hit Emily like a physical blow. They were exactly the kind of response she feared, that confirmed her suspicions that some ethical line might have been crossed. "Don't do that," she said, moving slightly away. "Don't treat me like someone who needs to be protected from the truth. If we're going to build something together, I need to trust that you'll be honest with me. Always." Michael observed her for a long moment, as if evaluating how much she could bear. Finally, he nodded. "Fair." He sat at the table, inviting her to do the same. "I discovered that Charles had been systematically manipulating social impact reports to please certain investors. Nothing illegal, but definitely questionable from an ethical standpoint." Emily felt her stomach sink. "And you used that against him?" "I presented the facts to the board as part of my argument about the importance of integrity in socio-environmental reports." Michael kept his gaze firm. It wasn't a direct threat, but the message was clear. "Blackmail, basically," stated Emily, feeling a wave of disappointment. "I prefer to call it strategic negotiation," replied Michael, trying to ease the tension with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Emily, in the corporate world, sometimes we need to—" "No," she interrupted, standing up. "Don't come at me within the corporate world. We spent weeks fighting precisely against this mentality that the ends justify the means, and now you use exactly the same tactics we condemned." Michael also stood up, frustration evident in his posture. "What did you expect? That I would simply accept defeat? That I would let your methodology, your years of work, be reduced to nothing because of Charles's inflated ego? I expected consistency, integrity. Emily felt tears of frustration forming in her eyes. How can I trust you now? How can I be sure you won't use the same tactics on me one day? The pain that crossed Michael's face was genuine. That's unfair, Emily. Everything I did was for us, to protect what we built. That's exactly the problem. You decided alone. You didn't consult me. You didn't give me the chance to have a say in something that directly affects my life, my work. Emily took a deep breath, trying to control her emotion. I need time to think. Please go away. Emily, I said, please. Her voice broke on the last syllable. After a moment of painful hesitation, Michael nodded. I'll be here when you want to. Talk, he said softly before leaving. When the door closed, Emily collapsed on the sofa, the tears finally flowing freely. The professional victory suddenly seemed empty in the face of personal disappointment. Why did everything have to be so complicated? Why couldn't she simply be happy without something falling apart? The following days passed in a blur of contradictory emotions. Emily dove into work, obsessively reviewing every line of the merger contract, looking for hidden traps that would justify her renewed distrust. Jason watched concerned, but respected her silence. In the studio, she produced pieces with feverish intensity, twisted forms, textured surfaces that seemed to scream emotions she couldn't express in words. Art had always been her refuge, her therapy, and now more than ever. Michael respected her request for space, limiting himself to short messages, asking if she was okay, offering to talk when she was ready. The physical distance hurt, but Emily knew she needed this time to clear her thoughts, to decide what really mattered. On the eve of signing the contract, Jessica appeared again at the studio, bringing Thai food and her usual frankness. You look terrible, she declared, observing her friend's swollen eyes. Thanks for the honesty, replied Emily with a tired smile. Jason told me about the contract. It's quite a victory, Emily. You should be celebrating. Emily pushed the food around in the container without appetite. It's complicated. Love usually is, commented Jessica casually. The question is the complication worth it? How? Did you know Jason was the right one? Asked Emily suddenly. How are you sure? Jessica considered the question with seriousness. I wasn't. There's no certainty when it comes to relationships, Emily. There's choice. Every day we choose to stay, work through the differences, grow together. She took a sip of her drink. Jason drives me profoundly crazy sometimes, and I'm sure I make him want to tear his hair out occasionally. But we choose each other, repeatedly. Emily reflected on those words for the rest of the night. When she finally went to bed, still without definitive answers, she noticed a small package on the bedside table. Inside, she found a delicate ceramic piece, clearly amateur, but made with evident effort and care. She immediately recognized it as Michael's first attempt on the wheel, the one they had created together. With it was a simple note, imperfect but honest, like me, like us. The next morning, the day of signing the contract, Emily woke with renewed clarity. She dressed carefully, choosing a red dress instead of the usual executive blazer. Some battles called for different armor. At the Horizon Group office, the signing ceremony was prepared with all corporate pomp. Photographers, elaborate coffee break, rehearsed speeches. Charles Morgan opened the event with words about synergy and shared vision that sounded empty to Emily. When it was her turn to speak, Emily ignored the speech prepared by the Public Relations Department. Instead, she spoke directly about integrity, about how truly sustainable businesses needed to be built on authentic values, not just on favorable spreadsheets. This contract represents more than a merger of companies, she concluded, her gaze briefly meeting Michael's among those present. It represents a commitment to truth, even when it's inconvenient, to transparency, even when it's uncomfortable, to the courage to stand up for what we believe, even when the easier path would be to yield. After the polite applause, the formal signing proceeded without incident. Emily felt a strange mix of accomplishment and emptiness as her pen slid across the paper. It was a new professional beginning, but what about the personal? When the ceremony ended, she found Michael waiting discreetly near the elevators. "Powerful speech," he commented, trying a hesitant smile. "Thank you." An uncomfortable silence settled between them, loaded with unspoken words. "Emily, Can we talk somewhere else?" she interrupted. "There's something I want to show you." An hour later, they were on Michael's small sailboat, sailing gently across San Francisco Bay. The late afternoon sky painted the water with orange tones, creating an almost unreal beauty. "Why did you bring me here?" asked Michael, adjusting the sails with the familiarity of someone who knows every inch of that space. "Because this is your place of truth," replied Emily, observing how different he seemed there, more relaxed, more authentic. "I thought we should have this conversation in a place where neither of us could hide behind professional personas." Michael nodded, understanding. He anchored the boat in a tranquil cove, away from the bay's main traffic. The silence between them now was different, expectant, but no longer oppressive. "These last days without you have been hell," he finally confessed. "I realized how many times in life I've made decisions alone, without really considering how they would affect the people around me. It's an ingrained habit, Emily. I can't promise it will never happen again, but I can promise I'll try every day to be better at it." Emily felt the sincerity in his words. "I'm so afraid, Michael, of trusting again, of being disappointed again." "I know," he approached cautiously, as if fearing to break her with a sudden movement. "And I'll probably disappoint you sometimes, just as you'll probably disappoint me occasionally. We're human, imperfect, but I promise it will never be for lack of love or consideration." "Love," repeated Emily, the word still sounding new on her lips. "That's what we feel, isn't it? This complicated, frightening, wonderful thing." "Without a doubt," replied Michael, finally taking her hands. "I love you, Emily Johnson. With your brilliant talent, your stubborn integrity, your heart that tries to hide but can't. I even love your distrust, because I know it comes from a place of strength, not weakness." Emily felt tears forming again, but this time they were different, not of pain or confusion, but of relief, of recognition. "I love you too," she admitted, her voice almost a whisper carried by the sea breeze, "and it both terrifies and liberates me at the same time." "Then let's be terrified and liberated together," proposed Michael, his smile gradually lighting up. "One day at a time." The kiss that followed was like coming home, familiar and new simultaneously, loaded with promises and possibilities. The setting sun transformed the water into liquid gold around them, as if nature itself was celebrating this new beginning. Indeed, the months that followed, Emily and Michael learned to navigate the complexities of their relationship with the same dedication they applied to their careers. The social impact division of the new company grew beyond expectations, attracting clients and investors who shared similar values. Charles Morgan, surprisingly, became one of the biggest advocates of the initiative when results began to appear. Emily continued her work with ceramics, now with renewed inspiration. Her pieces gained recognition in art exhibitions, creating an identity of their own beyond the corporate world. The Victorian house in Pacific Heights gained new contours when Michael gradually transferred his things there, transforming the space into a truly shared home. It wasn't perfect. There were discussions, moments of tension, old habits that occasionally resurfaced. Emily still struggled with her tendency to isolate when pressured. Michael still needed to constantly remind himself to consult before deciding. But with each obstacle overcome, the bond between them strengthened, acquiring the resistance of a well-fired ceramic piece, strong precisely because it had gone through the fire. 1 year after signing the contract, on a quiet Sunday afternoon, Michael took Emily for a boat ride. In the same place where they had reconciled, under the same orange sky of a San Francisco sunset, he knelt awkwardly in the limited space of the sailboat. "I didn't plan an elaborate speech," he admitted, taking a small box from his pocket. "I just want to continue building my life with you, Emily, in good moments and difficult ones, in calm waters and storms. Marry me?" The ring was simple, elegant, absolutely perfect. Emily looked at him, at the man who had entered her life unexpectedly and transformed everything, who challenged her, understood her, loved her in her totality. "Yes," she replied simply. "1,000 times yes." The wedding took place 6 months later, in an intimate ceremony in the garden of the Victorian house. Jason was the best man, Jessica the maid of honor. Emily's ceramic pieces decorated the space, silently telling the story of her emotional journey. Among the guests, colleagues from Horizon Group mingled with artists from Emily's circle, creating an unusual mixture that somehow worked perfectly, like the couple themselves. 5 years later, the Victorian house was even more alive. The sound of children's laughter echoed through the corridors, 2 children who had arrived to complete the family. The studio now had an additional space where small hands learned to mold clay under the patient gaze of their mother. Michael's office shared space with colorful toys and children's books. The social division of the company had become a national reference, proving that it was possible to combine profit and positive impact. Emily now divided her time between strategic management and ceramics courses she offered to women in vulnerable situations, using art as a reconstruction tool. On a quiet night, after putting the children to bed, Emily found Michael on the back porch, contemplating the starry sky with a glass of wine in his hand. She hugged him from behind, feeling the familiar warmth of his body. "What are you thinking about?" she asked softly. "About how unpredictable life is," he replied, turning to face her. "If someone had told me at that wedding 6 years ago that I would find not only a brilliant business partner, but the love of my life, you would have invested immediately," completed Emily with a smile. "You've always recognized a good opportunity." Michael laughed, pulling her closer. "Best investment I ever made." In the studio, kept on a special shelf, remained the first piece they created together. Imperfect, asymmetrical, but genuine. Next to it, the bouquet of flowers from Jason and Jessica's wedding, preserved as a memento of the moment that changed everything. Emily looked at the man beside her, at the house they had built together, at the life they shared. She realized that love wasn't the absence of challenges, but the courage to face them together. It wasn't perfection, but the beauty found precisely in the imperfections. Like ceramics, which gains character and resistance through fire, their love had been tested and strengthened, emerging more solid and true. On the horizon, the lights of San Francisco shined like promises, and in Emily's heart, the certainty that some promises, after all, are really worth keeping. The end of the Sea Cheese Sips story. Dear listeners, we hope that Emily and Michael's story has touched your hearts. To continue this journey of emotions, we've prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories. Find it here, clicking on the left. If you liked this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like the video. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complex